Hello, Eve. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Grand Slam Journey podcast.
Hi, Klara. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. I've been so looking forward to talking to you about all things related to your career, obviously AI, which you're on the forefront of scaling and creating with Microsoft and many other partners, and many other topics, obviously related to women in tech. I know it's a cause you're very interested in and you're supporting. And so I'm curious where this conversation takes us, because I have many things I wanted to ask you. But maybe first, I'll read a quick intro. Eve Psalti has 20-year tech and business leadership experience, currently the Senior Director at Microsoft Azure AI Engineering Organization, responsible for scaling and commercializing artificial intelligence solutions. You're previously the head of strategic platforms and Google Cloud, where actually you and I have met. So I'm privileged through my career to have met leaders like you, where you worked with Fortune 500 companies, helping them grow their businesses through digital transformation initiatives. Prior to Google, you have held business development, sales, and marketing leadership positions at Microsoft and startups across the US and Europe, leading over 200 people teams and $600 million businesses. And native of Greece, which I love the country, I hope we're going to dive into it a little bit more too. You hold a master's degree and several technology and business certifications from London Business School and the University of Washington. You currently serve on the board of We Global Studios, a full-stack startup innovation studio supporting female entrepreneurs. Please, handing it over to you. Anything you want to add? I forgot.
Well, thank you so much for the kind introduction. It's almost embarrassing. And you know you're old when your intro takes more than 4 minutes. But no, I think you covered that was a good summary of the kind of things that I've done. To be honest, it's hard. I consider myself an immigrant who is always curious, always driven. I want to learn and do new things. And yeah, I think my seriousness and my ambition probably led me to do the things that I've done and I keep doing.
I love that addition, and that's definitely a value I have always seen in you since we have met. And obviously, being privileged to have met you when we were together, when you were at Google, I was at Ericsson, and kind of seeing how you creating your career and finding ways that support your mission and you really believe in, become so intended, but stretching yourself to what is the next things you're curious and passionate about is definitely something that I am looking up to. And I was like, oh, what would you do? So I have many questions related to your career journey, but I typically want to start my podcast understanding a little bit about your upbringing. And if you look back, Greece is an amazing country. Obviously, it's been the cradle of Western civilization in many ways, from philosophy to education to democracy. So I'm actually curious how your upbringing growing up in Greece shaped you and some of the values. I know you've always been passionate about education and many of these programs, and how you found passion in business and technology.
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely, because I spent the first 22 years of my life in Greece, it definitely shaped me in a specific way. And I think a couple of characteristics is that, my mother was an educator. So we grew up appreciating how education gives you opportunities, how it opens doors, and it shapes you as an individual. That definitely connected a lot of dots for me down the line. Also, I think coming from a small country, from a smaller economy, makes you a little bit more scrappy. You find kind of like trying to create opportunities for yourself in an environment where resources and opportunities are scarce. So I think these are the two elements that I can point from my childhood that kind of like created a lot of the right conditions for what I did down the line.
Mm-hmm. Anything specific about technology? Because you've always kept in the center how to use technology for obviously business
Yeah.
innovation and advancing the human cause in education or other areas.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point because back then, technology looked much more different than it is now. And I was always very curious. I think that was kind of like the element there. So I was experimenting with, new tools, new gadgets, things that are in the market. I went to school and started programming with languages that no longer really exist. Although one, COBOL is still in wide use. So I always kind of like was interested not only in the novelty that technology brings, but also in the efficiency that it brings. And also, when you study software and engineering, you kind of figure out a way of thinking that helps you make decisions and structure things in other areas too.
Was that common in Greece to be part of this technology interest or anybody who influenced you towards it? How did you uncover that passion early on?
I think I was just curious myself. Like, I come from a household, nobody had any background in technology. My father was a medical doctor, my mother was an educator. I think both my brother and I kind of like grew up being very curious and trying to experiment with different things. And although it was a very conservative environment, it was also encouraged. So yeah, I can't pinpoint a particular individual or a particular kind of like situation outside of the fact that, we grew up in a household where we were encouraged to experiment and try new things.
So I guess on the note of experimenting, trying new things, and seems like following your curiosity, I'm actually curious, how did you get from Greece to pursue your education in the US?
I think how it came about, I mean, I always wanted to study business and technology, but the options back then in Greece were quite limited. So I started taking advantage actually before I came to the US. I took advantage of a program that was sponsored by the European Union, which was targeted for young workers. So I did a year in the Netherlands, which opened a lot of options for me. It was great to kind of like leave Greece and see how you can live and be independent and, try things in a different country that was kind of culturally diametrically different than Greece. And also it provided an option for me to continue on that journey that was not really clear before. So after coming back from the Netherlands, I had the bug, so I had to kind of like, um, figure out what the next thing was. So I started researching different universities in the US where I could study business technology, also in kind of like, in a cost-effective way. So I changed a couple of universities actually. Um, and because I was taking advantage of the different scholarships. And that's kind of like how I ended up in North Carolina. I started in the University of Charlotte in North Carolina, so UNCC, and then I graduated from Queen College. And yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. Again, leaving from Greece to go to the Netherlands was like a huge kind of like culture shock. And then going from the Netherlands to North Carolina, which is not the most kind of like progressive part of the country
Yes.
that's necessarily, was also a cultural shock. But again, I think it kind of like, it provided me the ability to get a college education, which I always wanted, and also the ability to travel, to live abroad, to experience new cultures and new ways of living, and also challenge myself. It wasn't easy to, start brand new in an environment that was not necessarily familiar. And also, I was trying to I was doing two different jobs. I was going to school more than full time. I think I graduated in 2.5 years with a
Wow.
grade point average of 3.9 something. So I was really almost in a hurry to kind of get this through and go to the next step.
Wow. I'm curious, how was your English? Because now you mentioned you started in North Carolina, which I landed in Texas. I thought I knew English when I came to US, and I didn't at all. I felt like I was asking excuse me after every other or second word, because actually in Europe we also use the British English, and
Yeah.
actually studying in English and traveling for tennis tournaments and just doing the regular business as far as where can I live and how do you find some food and tennis courts is very different. So I'm curious how your journey was and even acclimatizing to the language overall.
Yeah, the good thing coming from a country that nobody else speaks the language is that you get to speak other languages pretty fast. So, because nobody speaks Greek, and also Greece was always a country that lived primarily on tourism, we were exposed to English speaking, groups, individuals probably all of our lives. So even if you go to Greece now, you will see that there is a huge percentage of the population that is very fluent in English, or at least one other language. So English was never really an issue. Yes, the accent was always interesting, and to be honest, it made me question myself, am I the one, not using the language right? Because in the everyday interactions, as you mentioned, people make you repeat things and says, oh, I didn't catch that. Or so it makes you a little bit self-conscious, but it opens another door. I think it's an opportunity to kind of learn something new and add a feather to your cap.
I do want to touch base also that you mentioned you transferred a few universities to kind of take advantage of the scholarships, which I think it's so courageous. Just also looking at my own journey, I've had several opportunities to transfer during my college years in Texas. And I have to say, I never took the opportunity for several reasons, including one. I think there was a little bit of fear for me starting over because it takes so much to get used to the environment you're in, at least even the first year, and you just find some friends. And so you actually taking the step and saying, you know what, I just need to transfer, I need to continue. I think that alone speaks volume about your courage and just ability to try new things. Were you second guessing it at that point, or what was the mindset? How were you adjusting to different environments?
To be honest, I was never really proud of this choice. I was more pragmatic than anything else. I don't recommend it. I don't think there is a right or wrong way to do this. I think it's a personal choice. I just didn't want to end up with a huge student loan. Then I saw a lot of my peers accumulating. So I was trying to be pragmatic, kind of finish college and not end up with a huge loan. So I didn't really even consider the cost of starting over or friendships and all of that. I think I was more driven by graduating rather than creating a more relaxed environment for me living the college life. But again, if I were to do it all over again, I don't know if I would do it the exact same way. And also it's a personal choice. I think going to college and experiencing college life, I think it's a great thing. You only get to experience it once. So again, I don't think there is a right or wrong way to do this.
You mentioned you don't know if you would do it the same way. I'm curious if you look back at it, anything you would change or something that really stood out to you. You think if I just did this one thing differently, this is what I would do now.
I don't know. I don't like to second guess myself, and I kind of own every decision that I made, whether it was a good one or a bad one, because at that point of time, given all the things that I knew and all the things that were happening at the same time, I took the best decision that I thought it was appropriate. So if I have to do it all over again, then it means that all the other conditions would be different and probably the decision would be influenced as well.
Yeah. I love that thinking because I've gone back and forth, I have to say, in my life. I would change one thing still looking back,
Yeah.
but I
Which
do know
one?
if I would change it, it would trigger a whole change of reaction. And I don't ever know if I would end up in a better or worse or the same situation. I would have
Which one would
definitely.
you change?
I would have definitely transferred. So after my
Oh,
freshman year, I had several opportunities from universities, including University of Pepperdine, UCLA, Baylor,
mm.
USF. So I had a few opportunities that were kind of offering me to take on scholarship and compete in some ways in tennis on a better level. And
Oh, wow.
actually, the reason why I didn't take it was related to kind of starting over, but also I think I was second guessing whether I actually belong to, in some ways, to the higher level of group or people that I thought were better off. And so what I have learned and I now implement is that you always have to make decisions based on the opportunity. Never make them
Yeah.
based on fear. If you make decisions based on fear, it's kind of the wrong way to make decisions. And so every decision ever since, including current decision, I try to look at what's the opportunity. And if I'm not scared enough about the job or the opportunity, then
Yeah.
I feel like it's not big enough obstacle for me to move into. So the more terrified you are about your future progressions, I think the better off you are. It means you're moving to the right direction, at least for me personally.
I love that. Yes, it's a very tough decision to make. But I think it always yields great results of personal growth. And I kind of like the fact that you're saying that, oh, I was second guessing myself because I think we all did. And I find that women second guess themselves more often and more intensely than men or other groups. I think we are conditioned to be more perfect. We're conditioned to follow a certain path and we're conditioned to only speak or make decisions or have opinions after doing extensive research, after being kind of like 150% sure of what we're saying or what we're doing. And it's unfair on us, and I think it creates more angst than opportunity for us.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I have definitely sensed as well the perfectionism, including with just my own podcast. When I started podcasting first, it was the worst thing was to get to listen to my own voice. And so you have to overcome that in your own head. And actually now my next chapter is now moving to video podcast, which I love. I finally overcame my fear, and I love that this conversation will be streamed on YouTube and anyone can follow it video too. But it took me probably a year to work through my own fear of like, oh my gosh, what will my facial expressions be? It's never the guests. It's usually just related to my own self and how I view myself. But I love everything you shared, and I resonate with it personally, Eve.
It's true. I still don't like the sound of my own voice. I'm trying to come to terms with my never changing accent because I've been in the country since 95 and the accent is prominent, it's there. Like, is it annoying me? No. Do I think about it? Yes. Am I proud of it? No.
I resonate with you too. I feel like I'm right in the sort of position where my English will never be perfect and I'm forgetting slightly my Czech. I mean, I'm good with conversing with my mom and my sister, but obviously business Czech doesn't exist. So it's actually interesting. I feel like I'm kind of in between and belong nowhere, but I love your accent. Just to comment, I think it's always just related to how we view ourselves versus how we look at others.
You're absolutely right. I feel exactly the same way. I think we have like parallel paths in some ways because I feel like I'm considered a foreigner in a country that I lived most of my life, in the US, and also a foreigner when I go back home in Greece, given that, I haven't lived there since 995. So it's kind of like a very interesting kind of way to be in this type of limbo where you have affinity to two different countries, two different cultures, but you don't 100% belong to one.
It also really makes you think about maybe the uniqueness and in many ways, I'm going to use the word not fitting in, because you're kind of in your own bubble. How do you think about that, Eve, as you reflect on your past, or even now as you're shaping your career in technology and especially area of the generative AI, or do you consider that or think about it at all?
I'm trying to challenge myself to kind of like be comfortable in both worlds. I mean, obviously, my life and my job and most of my interactions are in the US, but in the past kind of like, several years, I tried to reconnect with, work that is being done in Greece. I feel like I'm interested in connecting back to a lot of organizations, a lot of groups that are really investing in the country. They're investing in the future of the country, whether it's independent groups, governmental groups, technology associations. So this is kind of like an interest for me, and that's kind of like a way to reconnect with a part of myself, of my personal and also professional life. I didn't pay as much attention in the past 20 years.
Especially had that thought when you were posting about your future conferences. I believe there's a conference in Athens that you're going to attend.
Generative AI Summit,
And so I was wondering, how does it feel for Eve to actually go back to your native country and talk about this new technology that you're driving globally with the biggest company in the world? Microsoft had overtook Apple. Obviously, AI is the trend, and everybody says it is because of the future that you're building with all of the AI technology, that it's unlocking next level of productivity, effectiveness, creativity. I'm going to pause there because you're the expert on it, but we're going to dive into next. But how does it feel to go back?
It's always great, and it's amazing to see the new generation really changing the country, right? And what I see, which is like fascinating, and I'm really, really glad that this is happening, is when I left the country, it was a little bit frowned upon to kind of leave, right? For many reasons. And now I see individuals, kind of like newer generations that are either finishing school and college in Greece or they're going abroad and then coming back. So I feel like there's not like the brain drain that we saw 20 years ago, but now people are coming back for whatever reason, right? But they realize that Greece is kind of like, is a great place to live. It's a great place to be healthy and active, many days of sunshine, beautiful environment. So it's not like a bad place to live. But it's also becoming, I think there are changes in the business side and conditions that attract these individuals to come back and start their own businesses in Greece, whether they are business in the cities or even in the countryside. And it's really encouraging. I hope that the government continues to support them, because a lot of times bureaucracy can get in the way of doing things right and fast, and and enabling people to like realize their dream. But more and more, I see this trend, which is really encouraging. And that's why I'm affiliated with a couple of groups that support this, because eventually this will help the country grow in the right direction. And, it's great to see the Gen Zs returning and not doing what I'm doing or what I've done.
Yeah, it's nice that some people actually go back. I always say if more Czech people were like me, Czech tradition would die, because I'm just really bad in keeping up with any Czech tradition. So it's nice that some people still go back or stay in the country and continue to have this uniqueness, which I love when I travel around the world to experience the unique cultures and how people do things. But maybe on that note of technology, let's dive a little bit deeper into what you do now. I've been very passionate, obviously, about the large language models or the generative AI trend. I've been trying to follow what you write on LinkedIn, and I know there's much happening when it comes to what this could do for us as a humanity, as well as technology advancements, and maybe even in relation to Greece and the next level of what Greece economy can achieve. What are you most optimistic about, and what would you maybe even want everybody to know about it?
Yeah, that's a great question and a big topic. Generative AI really exploded in the past couple of years, right? And these large language models, kind of like, the notion that you can interact with an AI system and get a lot of accurate results back. It really changed the way that we work, that we think, that we go to school, that we look for information. Of course, there are several challenges that we're going to talk about, but what I'm most optimistic about is like that I see how this technology is really improving the way that we, do a lot of things. Like let's take, for example, healthcare. These AI models are so accurate and so advanced that they can help improve diagnostics. It can help with providing, personalized medicine. It can help with providing personalized treatment outcomes. The fact that these machine learning models can analyze vast amounts of medical information can lead to more accurate diagnosis, right? So this is huge. Then we have in mostly kind of like the business side, it can increase the efficiency of the individual. So I always see AI as a tool, as a co-pilot, as we said, Microsoft, rather than the end of all. It might not be 100% right, but is it a tool that will save you time? It will help you automate routine tasks. It can help you streamline processes, and it will enhance your personal efficiency. Absolutely. And in the larger scheme, if you're a corporation, it can save money, it can increase the productivity of your groups, and it can help you be more competitive in the marketplace, right? Also, in areas where we don't see, where it's not really that evident, is education, which has always been a very traditional sector and a little bit, fearful of new tech. We see that education is being transformed through AI because it can help with personalized learning. It can really free up the educator to spend more time in the classroom with the students adapting to their own personal needs rather than doing kind of like, repetitive tasks. So there are a lot of like efficiencies that, again, if we use it and we understand it as a tool, it can help with our everyday tasks, and it will help us free up time to do the more important things that we humans are great at.
Yeah, I love that. Just to touch on maybe all of the industries or examples you shared, definitely healthcare. I've been part of Apple Health, and not to share anything proprietary, but one thing, this is common knowledge that everybody can look at, just third-party data and research. There's a huge decline in nurses, obviously because of the shortage and the burnout they went through COVID, as well as doctors. There's more and more people aging. I believe by 2050, the amount of population of people who are age 65 and above will more than double. And then you have also this knowledge gap, as well as the health system gap of who will take care of this aging population and how best to take care of them. And so doctors are forced more and more to be more effective and more efficient, and they don't have actually even the time needed to often dedicate the time that the people would want to have spent with the doctor, because they're also pressured for this efficiency. I believe many listeners have friends who are doctors. I hear from my friends who are doctors that they're so being driven to this, oh, you only have like 30 minutes with this person and that's all you can spend. And so if you have that, how can I use these tools to actually be more accurate and help support them? So I 100% agree. And I love actually seeing that the healthcare is adopting this technology so early on, because I find they're typically one of the more hesitant industries, which kind of makes sense because they're dealing with health data. But I do love seeing this trend. On efficiency, I love actually using many AI tools for my podcast. So from a process perspective, including some title suggestions and summary descriptions, I've actually found it a huge improvement in addition to my process. But actually diving into the education, I love what you mentioned, because especially at the beginning, I have read a lot of things about obviously teachers and professors being worried that students will use this for like cheating and essay generation, so nobody will write any more essays. And it seems like you're actually seeing different trend, and you've been passionate about education for many years. It's been an area that you have been focusing on professionally. Share a little bit more about that and how you see the difference of the fear that I've been reading about and maybe is in the market versus what you see as the reality of people actually using this in a productive way.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like education has been a very traditional sector by design, but we see a wide adoption both in the K through 12 and in the higher ed area. Um, Educators, like the healthcare professionals, are in high risk, right? Especially in the US, they're not very well compensated for the work that they do. They're very thinly spread. They work with classrooms or 40, 45 kids. And it's very difficult to provide that personalized learning experience that every student needs. So if you have an AI copilot to help you grade, all the different tests that you need, and you can free up time to spend more one-to-one time in the classroom with your students, this is great, right? If you can use AI to generate or to get some ideas, brainstorm around how to build a lesson plan, that's great, right? You can still create the lesson plan with your trademark on it, but you don't have to start from zero, right? I think we need to find kind of like the efficiencies and the processes. Now, on the other side, I hear what you're saying. Will a student go to ChatGPT and generate an essay and then submit it and all of that? The reality is that, yes, they can do it, but also as an educator, you can catch this. There is software and there are, I think, a couple of applications that you can use. I don't remember the names, but to figure out plagiarism. So it's easy to detect. And also you can kind of like see it from the language because yes, these LLMs can generate text in a very human-like way, but you have to be careful of the timestamp because a lot of these models, their training stopped like 6 months or 8 months or 12 months before. So if you're writing an essay about kind of like current events, it won't really help you and you have to do the research yourself. And also there are a lot of tools that can help the educators catch, this type of plagiarisms. Again, I think you have to use it as a tool. It's not going to replace the work that you do. I think there is a lot of fear like, oh, is AI replacing the educator? No, because what you're teaching your students is around this 21st century learning skills, right? Which is creativity, decision making, critical thinking. AI cannot do this.
I do love the example you give, especially about grading. That's something I haven't considered, but I have read many studies around sometimes the bias around grading and the way our minds work. I believe even famous Daniel Kahneman writes about it in his book. Maybe I've read it in one of his articles or his book specifically, because if people grade, the way our minds work, you always are biased based on the latest report you have read, especially in essay-like answers. And so I actually wonder if this accurately constructed LLM could actually be more accurate and less biased when it comes to grading to actually provide more proper way of grade papers. So I love that example, just something that came into mind.
Yeah. But I mean, you touched on a good point around bias, and I think there is inherent bias in humans and also in AI models as well. And that's one of the concerns that I think everyone who is developing or using these AI models is concerned about. Because these AI systems can inherit bias that is present in the data that is being used to train them. So it can lead to bias prediction, bias decision making. So that's why it's very important, as a user, to educate yourself how the model that you're using, how it has been trained, and also be very critical and test the outcomes and the results that it yields. If you are creating the models, I think it's important to make sure that there is kind of like a governance process to establish explainability, transparency around what type of data is being used for training, what is the decision-making process, and have this kind of like what we call responsible AI guidelines and frameworks for how we develop and how we deploy these tools.
I love that you mentioned it. It's something I've been pondering for quite a while. Maybe just to give example, I think everybody has been using some sort of this smart assistant. I always felt, especially at the beginning when I used Alexa, and there's been some of these articles that people said I had to like lower my voice. Hey, Alexa. And when I talk to Alexa in the lower voice that was more of like where typically men are positioned, it actually heard me better than in my high level women pitch. And obviously it's not trained for understanding Czech English, but that's one example that comes to mind, but you can translate it to really anything else because these models really use data that need to be labeled by someone. I guess now we can use perhaps our automated process for even the data labeling, which can accelerate some of the LLM development. But that's what I've been hearing is the importance of diversity. And I, again, love that we have a leader like you pioneering this trend. And we need more women in this generative AI because it's going to drive sort of the advancements of many different industries. And so if we don't have kind of the right diversity set who's looking at how to create this right models and labeling the data that could further create a bigger gender gap in many different industries, but also bias towards like specific angle based on who's creating it. You have mentioned some of these things that people may want to adopt to eliminate it. Anything else that's top of mind, Eve? Or I guess if you think about this technology and even your passion of creating more equality for women in leadership positions, what are you most concerned about, if anything, or what's top of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, definitely to close the previous topic, you're absolutely right. Having diversity in the groups that develop, review, and deploy these models is absolutely key. Not only for gender balance, but for full representation across all different teams and types of individuals and groups, whether they're represented or not. Specifically for women, since we're going towards the March 8th time frame where, they give us a day, so that's good. I'm a big advocate about creating kind of equity for women, especially women in business, women in STEM, women in leadership roles. As we are, again, going back to what we said in the beginning, we are conditioned to behave in a different way. And I think we have to break a couple of molds to make sure that we bring women at the same level of opportunities as other groups. A lot of times I see women that they're not advocating for themselves. And I think probably we demonstrated it even in the call where we were self-doubting or we were double guessing. And I think we have to feel comfortable to communicate and celebrate our skills, our achievements, and our contributions. I know it might feel like chest thumping, but I think it's essential. You have to communicate your own worth and you have to let others know because you lead by example. And also it's good to celebrate its success. The other thing that I feel like we don't do a lot, or we don't do it in the right way, is networking and relationship building. Networking is key, but I feel like a lot of times women confuse networking for creating friendships and affiliations. And I think there is a big difference. Networking is very crucial for advancing your career, advancing your personal brand. It's almost like a full-time thing that you need to be committed and you need to have a goal. Networking is not leading to friendship, or it can, but that's not the goal. You should be very intentional. Um, about who you network, why you network with them, what are you trying to get out of it, and really lead the engagement, whether it's like a mentorship thing, or you want to use that to join a professional association or whatever the goal is. So I think networking is the second thing that I feel like women, we need to pay attention and we need to get a little bit better on. And the other thing that I'm guilty myself, to be honest, is confidence and assertiveness. We need to make sure that we are asserting ourselves in a certain way, and this means using a certain language, using certain verbs, to make sure that we're expressing our ideas in a strong way. We're advocating for ourselves, because that's how you bring equity across all the different groups. So the controversial thing is about, building a personal brand. I know this is kind of like a very controversial term, because really, is a person a brand? Does it make sense to, create a personal brand? I'm a strong proponent of it. This might be a controversial statement for many, but a well-defined brand can really contribute to visibility, to opportunities. You have to curate your own kind of persona. Not really, go, outside of who you are. You have to maintain the DNA of who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you interesting, special. But being very intentional about this curated view will open a lot of doors. So I highly recommend it.
Yes, I love all the tips you've given, Eve, and I could name every single one in the past, including probably present, that I can still do better and continue to practice. Just to add, totally agree on the expression and what you mentioned, even the confidence and assertiveness. One of the things, actually, when I started doing my podcast and I'm interviewing obviously men and women, is actually interesting when I have noticed some of the differences in tone and how men versus women express discomfort with some questions. And we typically tend to kind of make it like a laugh, but we make our voice a bit softer than men typically do. It's obviously across sort of the board that I don't have statistics other than that 68 episodes I have released, but in the context of those, it's been interesting of even just my understanding of the tone we use and kind of how we communicate. And obviously networking, 100% agree. Even when
Words
I'm
matter. Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
No,
but
please.
just to add to this point, words really matter. And I find that women use kind of like these things. So let me add my 2 cents, meaning like, my opinion is not really super critical, but I'm going to add on. No, you're offering a point of view. It's not 2 cents. It can be $100. Or they might say, in my opinion. Well, of course, but I mean, don't caveat it, right? I mean, just be very assertive and use very strong words, use I statements, which I think will position you in that power role within the room.
Yes. And having fantastic female leaders as examples actually do help. One of the things I do want to mention, being at Apple, I have seen way more female leaders than perhaps at Ericsson, which has been fantastic, and learning from them and seeing women stepping up and leading with that assertiveness and speaking their mind, at least for me, has been just so refreshing and so great to see. I was like, oh my God, there's like this woman that's not putting herself down, but she is confident and she knows how to communicate with confidence about that specific topic. And she's not afraid to step up and say no and have a different opinion without some of these kind of words of
Yeah.
making her cell look smaller or her opinion look smaller. And you're obviously one of those, Eve, as well, that I look up to. And so it's been really fantastic to know a leader like you. I want to dive into your own career as well, and just to reflect. Anybody who's thinking, oh my God, Eve is great, looks at your LinkedIn, I would love to have a career perhaps like Eve. And, there's, I believe, no linear progression to a goal, but reflecting back on many of the roles you have had, I'm actually even curious, what are some of the most fun roles and what made them fun for you?
We've done so many different things. I think the roles that were interesting were a couple of the product management roles, because I think when you're in a product management kind of like environment, you have this duality. So you care about the product, the technology, creating something from scratch, but also you care about the user, the customer, the person on the other side who will really experience the service, the product, the tool. And I think having this duality and going back and forth, kind of like, how do we build it in the most efficient way? But also, is it the right thing that how do we make it easy to consume, to experience? How do we delight the user? But also, are we streamlining the software development part of it? So you have to constantly go back and forth, which can be exhausting. But I find it really a rewarding way to kind of like, look at both sides of the coin and create something. So it kind of like combines the creativity and the, creating something from nothing, but also creating something that people will want to use and gravitate and even love.
I love that. And I think just you mentioning that example brings me also almost back to your upbringing and what you had mentioned, your journey and that curiosity and creativity of trying to find your way through and really following what you believe was interesting to you and learning from that. So I can see that connection of what you mentioned even early on. Maybe just for everybody, I want to quickly summarize. You study your career in Microsoft early on, where you've been building skills and experience to hold high-profile roles, including Global Director of the Public Sector, where you led education programs in 119 countries, reaching more than 220 million students and 12 million educators at Google Cloud. You were the head of strategic platforms, helping to transform industries with Google Cloud's technology and innovation. Now, as we mentioned, you're back at Microsoft, unleashing the next level of creativity and productivity for enterprise with Azure Cloud and the AI platform. You've shared some tips about even women, what we should be doing better, but I'm curious, if you look back on your what sounds impressive career, I am sure there's no career like yours without some setbacks or hard learnings as well. So if you had to reflect on that, what were perhaps some of the learnings that didn't come to you naturally, you had to learn the hard way, and you would think, oh, I think this is something that people should keep top of mind to maybe don't go through some of the hard times that I had gone through?
I would say that earlier in my career, I was very hard on myself when I would fail or something. So I was not really embracing failure as a learning opportunity. I was embracing as, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing it right. I will never do it right. So I was very hard on myself. I think being kind to yourself and really seeing a failure as a way to learn, as a way to make adjustments, to understand what went wrong, and really use this as an experience to improve is something that I'm kind of like getting better. And I think I'm at a point now where it's kind of like water off my back. But earlier on, it really took a hard toll on me. Another thing is prioritizing work-life balance. I know it sounds very cliche, but for someone who is very ambitious, who is very driven, who is very energetic, it's very easy to commit to your work and not have kind of like a more balanced approach. There were times that I was, burning out, and this was really impacting my productivity. I was not happy doing what I'm doing. I wasn't good at setting boundaries. And because again, I was very ambitious, I thought like, oh, if I would do this extra thing, I would like really grow in my career. And that's not the case. You don't have to kill yourself to grow your career. You don't have to work overtime. You don't have to dial in at 5 o'clock in the morning and 9 p.m. at night. I had to find this the hard way. It was very, very hard at times, in my 30s and my 40s. The other thing is, I would say what I'm getting better now and what I, wish I was much better earlier on is really cultivating that growth mindset. Satya was the one that kind of brought it as a concept to Microsoft, and it was groundbreaking and all of that. But I mean, the more I think about it, really adopting a growth mindset where you see a challenge not as something that is stopping you or aggravating you or it's the end of all, but as an opportunity to learn and improve. And also kind of like how to be resilient are really kind of like things that I had to learn the hard way. I was really focusing on the setbacks, and I was seeing them as my path to failure rather than a stepping stone to growth and success and overall happiness. And then the last thing, which again, I think it serves us well, both in our personal and our business life, is be clear and communicate clearly what you want. Be not only articulate in how you present your ideas and how you listen actively and all of that, but really be very concrete in how you want to communicate your ideas and how to present yourself and your conviction, because that's a great trait of a good leader. A good leader does not have to say a lot of things. You have to say the right things at the right time with the right empathy, with a active listening. And these are things that, can carry you in many, many situations inside and outside of work.
It's been fantastic hearing your tips and your personal experiences, obviously about career and what we women could be doing more of to achieve our next career steps, whatever that means for each of us. I have a few more questions that I wanted to ask, obviously in relation to your job now, since you're creating the future of creativity and productivity for enterprises with the AI platform. What are you personally most optimistic about when it comes to this technology?
We're really at a point where AI models are becoming very accurate. They're becoming very powerful. And I think they provide a great tool for us to do our work much easier in a more efficient way. So again, as I said, we have to really pay attention to not take everything for granted or just challenge the outcomes. I think exercise critical thinking to make sure that the systems are not hallucinating or they're not providing the wrong information. But AI, I see it as a horizontal, as kind of like a key ingredient of our everyday life or for getting stuff done easier and better, and freeing up time for us to do things that are more important, more interesting. Like a lot of people talk about job displacement, for example. And the reality is that, yes, if you are doing a repetitive job, yes, your role might be at risk, but I think this opens up a lot of opportunities for new roles that will be able to use AI in order to do certain tasks. So what I would like get out of that is to make sure that all of us get familiar with the advancements that are happening in the generative AI space, because in many cases, we'll need to have that training, we need to have this additional awareness and these additional skills that will help us get a better role, a more fruitful career, even if you're not a software engineer, right? You don't have to be a developer in order to be an AI. If anything, I think we see things with prompt engineering, we see kind of like the pool opening, and we're democratizing all the various groups that can code, especially now with new models that are using natural language to translate into code. We are enabling other groups to develop simple applications that they can use in their personal and their work life without having to have extensive software engineer background.
I personally love actually the no-code potential and progression.
Yeah.
I know several languages, but I don't know the coding language. Is really one of the things when I was at Apple, I realized how impactful you can be if you create an amazing app for people. And so I actually hope to try them out and maybe create my own application one day without knowing how to code. So I'm really excited about that. I guess on the opposite side, there's been a lot of talks about AI. You mentioned even AI replacing us. Obviously, the scary reality that people have, ethics in AI, vulnerability testing, getting rid of bias. We talked about. Anything else that you're personally most concerned about, if anything, that you believe this is really one of the key areas we all, maybe even personally, as you mentioned, we should be keeping an eye on when we're testing some of these large language model and playing with this generative AI?
I always say that we always have a responsibility, and it's a distributed responsibility across everyone. There is responsibility for the teams and organizations that are developing these large language models to make sure that they are built in the most robust way, to make sure that they are explainable, they can be traced, and all of that. There is also accountability and responsibility in the user side. Don't take the outcome for granted. Make sure that you test the result, you benchmark the result, and also there is accountability at on the governance side, right? So either governments and other institutions need to create the right processes, the right guidelines, so that we can all use this technology in the most secure and private way. Obviously, here in the US, we are in an election year, so I'm concerned that there are a lot of systems that can be vulnerable to adversarial attacks. There are malicious groups that will manipulate information to deceive everyone. So definitely investing in security, in privacy, in creating the right guardrails and introducing regulation that will enable the the responsible use of AI are definitely key.
Going back to kind of the big trend, 2024, as you mentioned, lots going on, election year. We have AI that people can use in the positive, but not so positive way. We have March, the International Women's Day coming up. Really, you can take this from any angle you want. What would you want to inspire people to be doing more of or less of in 2024?
I love this question. I would say there's three things for me. One, I would say, is cultivating positive gratitude. I'm a big believer, and I wasn't in the beginning, so it kind of like developed over time. I believe in empathy and kindness. Small acts of kindness can get you a long way. Help someone, support someone, mentor someone, sponsor someone, even if you don't know what you're getting out of it immediately. I think, creating that kind of like, system of gratitude in terms of individuals, experiences, and, really integrating it as an aspect of your life creates a positive mindset. And I think it's kind of like, it makes you feel good. And I believe in karma. So if you help someone and if you're kind to someone or a situation, it will come back in the most positive way for you. The other thing that I'm a firm believer is continuous learning. There are a lot of things that are rapidly changing around us. What we learned at school, what we learned in the university, what we did 10 years ago is probably already obsolete. So exploring new skills, staying up to date with the new trends and new opportunities will create a lot of net new professional and personal growth. And the third piece is also connected with the first, and I find it again. This is something that it grew on me over time. Is making sure that you get involved in your community. Yes, we are all strong and great individuals, but we're part of a whole. I find acts like volunteering in your community center, delivering meals on wheels, doing whatever like fits your skill set, your interests, and fits your soul, creates a sense of connection, and it makes you feel good, and it helps kind of the environment that you live in.
I love all of those three, Eve. Maybe just to break this down and put them into real words now, I'm incredibly grateful for actually, again, meeting you. And if there's something I reflect on in my career, the highlight of actually knowing you personally, it's been fantastic. And I conquer your kindness has been always one of the things that stood out to me. And I've called you several times about guidance on my next career steps. And so thank you for your mentorship as well. So that speaks volume also about, I consider you being part of my kind of support system and a strong leader that I look up to. And so anybody who wants to reach out, follow you based on the conversation they've heard, or maybe thinking about how to best use the new and upcoming AI tools and platforms for their company and partnerships, what's the best way to stay in touch?
First of all, I want to thank you for your time, the conversation. I think all your questions were very thought-provoking. It made me think myself. Also, I want to commend you because, I know we worked and known each other for several years, and I've always been impressed with your drive, with your creativity, with your agility and your openness to change and evolve. And, it was always a pleasure talking to you, working with you. And also, I was always a little bit starstruck because being a professional athlete takes a lot of discipline. And, being able to switch entirely, like, from a professional athlete career into a business career takes a lot of guts. So you should give yourself a lot of credit. I'm delighted that we had this time to talk about different things that might or might not be interesting to people. And to answer your question, people can find me on LinkedIn at Psalti, on Twitter or X at Psalti. And I'd like to hear from them, and if this was any helpful, if they have similar experiences, and go from there.
Excellent. I'll make sure to add it to the episode notes as well, so people again easily click and find you. And thanks again, and I look forward to continue to follow you and enjoy your conference in Greece.
Same here. Thank you, Klara. Take care.
Thank you.